Hello, everybody, and I'm doing a surprise early morning live stream here on the Delphi pretrial hearings that took place last week. Again, we're discussing the double homicides on February 13th, 2017 of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. And this is my first time using StreamYard to do a live stream. I've done StreamYard recordings before and posted them, but this is my first time doing this with StreamYard with potential viewer comments coming on the screen here. So bear with me. Hopefully it works out well. Thanks to anybody who's joining me. And first, I want to give a disclaimer. Number one, anybody we talk about in this case is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. We know Richard Allen's trial, who was the one who was accused of this crime, is coming up in a couple of months, hence them having the pretrial hearings in the first place. To determine what's going to be allowed as evidence, what's going to be admissible in court. And hopefully I sound okay. I had some dental work done like 5 days ago that I'm still recovering from. Aside from that, the other disclaimer I want to give people, especially family members, there are going to potentially be very graphic things that I briefly discuss that were discussed at the pretrial hearings in this live stream. So again, if any of that offends you, upsets you, I just want to warn everybody, there were some really, really disturbing things that really even got to me that were talked about during this pretrial hearing. I know 7 o'clock in the morning isn't the best time for a live stream, but people can always go back and replay it too. So I'm just going to go through my list of things here, which is actually pretty long. I'm guessing this will be like a 20 to 30 minute live stream potentially. And what I specifically want to discuss more than anything today is the expert testimony of the state's witness, Pat Cicero. Now, who is Pat Cicero? He's a teacher at multiple places. And let me just make sure I have all of his credentials right here. The Indiana Crime Center he teaches at, and the National Forensic Academy in Tennessee. Cicero was questioned by one of the state's expert interrogators during last week's pretrial hearings, and some of what he revealed was just plain shocking. First of all, he stated that he believed that Liberty German was dragged almost 70 feet after she was killed. One of the things we learned from this hearing also is that Liberty was apparently, according to Cicero's testimony, mobile at the time this occurred. So meaning she was either potentially running, moving, and he stated he knew that because of the blood spatter analysis that was on Libby's foot, meaning she was either walking through the blood pooling that already existed. She may have been trying to escape. Just absolutely disgusting scenarios going on there. It's difficult to even talk about. One of the other things he said is he thinks that the reason why Libby's arm was raised up in the air at the crime scene wasn't necessarily because of staging or posing, but because whoever did this took her. He said it was consistent with her being taken and dragged by one of her arms, which is why they thought her arm was up in the air, and dragged almost 70 feet. And the reason he stated he believed that was the case was because of the amount of blood that was on her lower leg, her rear end, things like that, when she was potentially being dragged back through the pooling and the blood, and that some of the blood splatter analysis showed that she had her hands up toward her neck, which he said was consistent with like a carotid artery sort of wound. Just really, really difficult stuff. Silas Stingy says, heartbreaking details, those poor families. Absolutely. There's no other way around it. And again, that's why I wanted to warn people before they started watching this. There were some very, very graphic things that were revealed about this crime scene itself. by Pat Cicero. Moving on here, also during this testimony, there was a lot of discussion about, what the girls were wearing, what they weren't wearing. And Cicero also, in his opinion, stated that at some point, he believed, in his opinion, that Abigail Williams was at least partially nude, which kind of, and this is me speculating, kind of leads me to believe that this may have been a sexually motivated crime. We don't know if Richard Allen, whoever did this, was, trying to do some perverted photography, if he was trying to commit a sexual assault, or what he was doing. But the fact that he testified that she was at least partially nude, but he also testified, contrary to what some people were saying before this information became public, that he did not believe that Abby was redressed after the fact. I guess she was found with a hoodie on, and he testified that he believed that she was killed or stabbed, I believe, with that hoodie on. And the reason he said that he didn't think she was redressed is because there would have been more blood in certain areas, I guess, around the hooded sweatshirt, if that had been the case. So just real interesting to hear secondhand accounts of people who were in the courtroom of what Cicero's testimony was. The other big thing, and we've had people, left and right who've said, well, there was a rune that was left on the tree. There was an F, all of that stuff, and all of the years of wild speculation and rumor that have gone on. Cicero tried to put that to rest by saying he didn't think it was an F shape on the tree at all, or a rune, but in fact, he compared it more to an upside down L. And he stated there wasn't some middle line in it that made it look like an F. And he also said that he believed that it was actually transfer markings, likely from someone's hand, possibly Libby's, possibly somebody else's. And I guess the defense for Allen asks, could that have been from somebody else's hand? Could it have been from this? Could it have been from that? And one of the things that Cicero said was that for somebody to have taken and painted that lettering on there as a rune or as a some sort of a marking, that it would have taken a long time for somebody to have gone back and kept dipping their hand or something in the blood and coming back to that tree and repeatedly painting over. And he said that's not what he saw there. He said it was very, very light in nature, and that it was more consistent with, like he said, some sort of a hand marking. So he kind of tried to put to rest the rumor that that was some sort of a rune or some sort of a Odinist symbol, like people in the defense team have been trying to speculate. Renee Days, good morning. Good morning to you too. And again, like I said, I'm up early here. I didn't know if I wanted to do a live stream this early, but I figured, hey, I'm up. I've got a bunch of notes. I don't know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the day, so I might as well do it now. Thanks for joining us on here. Some other notes I took here from this pretrial hearing. Cicero, this expert witness, he has testified in 30 cases now. Okay, so he's got some experience doing this sort of thing. So it's not like it's somebody that the prosecution just picked off of the streets to give this expert testimony. Some of the questions I have are this. Adrenaline can make you do a lot of different things, and it really got my wheels spinning about the crime scene. If he's testifying that on the other side of that creek, Libby was dragged 70 feet, I've never had to drag a body, but that's an awfully long way. That, if this was Allen by himself, he had to have been dragging her with a whole bunch of adrenaline going. And again, the way Cicero portrayed it made it sound like Libby might have actually been trying to escape and run away when she was killed. So there there seems to be contradictory information to me. Do you all remember the FBI search warrant affidavit that the FBI put out for Ron Logan's property, when they said there was a lot of blood loss at the crime scene, but it also said there were no signs of a struggle, if you recall. Now, I don't know how the FBI came to that determination initially, but Pat Cicero's testimony at this pretrial hearing seems to kind of contradict that, at least when it comes to Libby. Because if he's stating that she had to be dragged 70 feet back toward where near Abby was, and if there were blood spatter or blood pooling markings on the bottom of her foot that indicated she was trying to run away or escape, we have to remember that if that's the case, I mean, we've seen the shoe picture in the creek. Remember, if she's running away, she's trying to run away at least probably partially barefoot, which would have made it easier for Alan or somebody else to potentially catch up with her. And let's see right here. Silas says, makes much more sense than the odorous nonsense. Absolutely. And I'm about to get to that in a second because that was discussed a little bit as well. It really bothers me that the defense team continues to just kind of, as they call, dead name people and put people's names out there when they don't have any physical evidence that I've seen or that's been presented at these pretrial hearings that Brad Holder or anybody else is directly involved in this crime. Whereas we have actual eyewitness information, Alan's own accounts, and a purported unspent round that matches Alan's gun that do put Alan allegedly at the crime scene. The other thing, I guess, that came up in pretrial hearings was that, according to the people who were there, was that Brad Holder, I guess, was either clocking in or out of work at like 2:30 something p.m., which would have been right around the time that the homicides happened. So he it seems, couldn't have even physically been at that crime scene during that time. So again, that's part of the reason they're having these pretrial hearings, is because Judge Gall can, in fact, say to the defense team, hey, if there's enough evidence that's brought forth, this guy was at work, you guys are purporting this odorous theory where Brad Holder or somebody else is involved. But if there's evidence in the pretrial hearing that shows that that dude was at work or this, that, or the other thing, the defense might not even be allowed to introduce that individual or that theory at trial. So that's why these hearings are so important, is that Judge Gall has to kind of wade through what's BS and what's not that's presented by both of these sides to see if this even makes it to trial in a couple of months. And the more we hear at these pretrial hearings from the prosecution's expert witnesses, the more it seems to me like this odorous theory just seems more and more sketchy to me. And it's like there's some holes that are starting to be punched into it. One of the things that keeps coming up in my mind, and that also came up at these hearings, is, was there more than one person involved? Now, we can speculate about that all day long. We have speculated about that for a long time. But this kind of blew my mind. And I made a video about it the other day or yesterday or the day before. Some of you have probably seen it. And it's a video I made entitled, My Information Was Correct. I told everybody, and I took up some flack from some people because everybody said, well, anybody could have known this and that. Well, no, they couldn't have. I had information about Kegan Kline telling his cellmate and telling people that he was at the crime scene that day with his father in a red Jeep long before Murder Sheet ever reported it as fact. That information was given to me by detectives before I even made it public. A long time. So when that information was given to me by Kline's cellmate at the time, I didn't make that information public immediately. I gave it to police first for a long time so that they could investigate it. And one of the things that came out in this pretrial hearing was, not only did they investigate that information, they investigated it exhaustively. And the crazy part is that the expert testimony this week from one of the police detectives, Indiana State police detectives that investigated this case, stated that yes, in fact, Kline did say that he was there with his father that day near the cemetery at a Jeep, and that they actually physically took him out of jail, took him down the roadway toward the old cemetery. But I guess at some point they determined that Kline telling them this was complete bullshit. They also said Kline was the reason why, after he allegedly told detectives that his dad threw a phone and a knife in the Wabash River. And again, I brought that information to you at all and told you in my videos that that Wabash search was definitively related to Kline and to this investigation, and that I wasn't going to go into more detail, and that, I had sources telling me that sort of thing. So this is all information that I confirmed to all of my viewers and people here on this channel a long time ago, and some of it, again, I had before. And I don't want to keep saying, oh, I knew this before this, and, bragging this and that. That's not what this is about. I'm just trying to show everybody, when I made that video the other day, that the information that was given to me was in fact accurate. It was in fact vetted by the Indiana State Police, thankfully. But they had to find out whether or not Kline was telling the truth. And according to them, they think that Kline, at least when it comes to, what he said about him and his dad being there, et cetera, that they don't have proof of that. And that they did in fact search the Wabash River. They did in fact find cell phones. They did in fact find multiple knives. Okay, they found stuff. But none of it could be linked back to Kline. But here's what still bugs the crap out of me, everybody. Okay. During this testimony that the Indiana State Police detective gave during this pretrial hearing, one of them also stated that they believe that other people besides Kline were accessing the Anthony Shots account, and that it was likely somebody else in the Kline household and possibly other people. So again, I'm not accusing anybody else of a crime, but there still exists the possibility that Kegan or somebody else facilitated this crime through that Anthony Shots account potentially, and that they just can't prove that person's involvement. So I want to caution everybody that even though he's in jail for something else, for CSAM, for 40-something years, Kline could still possibly have had some direct involvement in this, okay? That's one of the things we've learned from this pretrial hearing, is that's what detectives believe. And I'd like to personally thank the Indiana State Police detectives for taking the information that was given to me by their cellmate, vetting it, or by Kline's cellmate, vetting it, verifying it, sorting through what's real, sorting what's through not. And it's sickening because it seems like Kline just sent them on a wild goose chase. But again, we have to remember, think about what his behavior was like after the fact. Right after this crime was committed, he splits for Las Vegas. He tells detectives in later interviews he was supposed to meet Libby at the bridge that day, but she never showed. He told detectives, that they knew what his Google searches were. He was searching for Sandy Hook bodies. How long does DNA last? If you weren't involved in the crime in some way, or somebody wasn't, why are you splitting town and searching all of those things? Is it just because you realize, oh my gosh, they're going to connect me with the Anthony Shots account and the CSAM stuff? Yes, that's possible. But it also remains possible that there's some sort of involvement here we don't know about. And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I just want everybody to know that the detectives vetted all of that information exhaustively. And the red Jeep story that I told you that Kline was telling everybody, they determined that was real. As I stated, there were people calling me names. Oh, that never happened, blah, 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 blah. Well, even if it was a BS story that he made up, it did in fact happen, and we're finding that out now. So anyway, on to other things. There's going to be speculation, I'm sure, at trial too, about there being more than one person involved. I think even as Tobe Lesenby and other investigators have said throughout the course of this investigation, they've gone back and forth about whether or not they think there was more than one person involved. And at this time, it seems like Allen is the only one they believe they can definitively link to this crime, to a jury anyway. So there may be much more evidence that comes forth at trial that reveals a lot of things to us. Let's see what else I have here. This one is big. This is real big. Okay, all of you people who said that the girls were killed somewhere else and moved back to the crime scene, according to the state's expert witness, Pat Cicero, that's gone. Not true. Completely thrown out the window, complete BS. I've posted videos on here about Tobe Lesenby being interviewed in the Carroll County Comment, telling everyone the girls were killed where they were found. That wasn't good enough for everybody. Now, Cicero states here the other day that, again, in his testimony at the pretrial hearings, that the girls were killed at the crime scene. Granted, he also testified Libby was dragged back toward near where Abby was, 70 feet, after she was possibly trying to escape, run away. Who knows? We know Alan had a weapon, but they weren't like taken to some far off place, brought back there later on, dumped, etc., based on the analysis of Pat Cicero, the blood spatter expert. Silas, you say, I guess maybe he meant no defensive wounds, so didn't fight back. Are you referring to Abby or Libby? It does seem, again, he didn't say, the testimony I saw or the transcribing of it didn't say anything about her hands having injuries, but mentioned about her putting her hands up toward her neck, possibly trying to cover the fact that her jugular vein was cut. It just gruesome stuff. Libby, when you said no struggle. Okay, let's see here. Libby, when you said no struggle. Again, it was the FBI affidavit for the search warrant of Ron Logan's property that claimed there was no struggle and that there was a tremendous amount of blood loss. So that was the FBI stating that in their Ron Logan property search warrant affidavit. That's where that information comes from. Again, if somebody's got evidence that they're running away, as Cicero testified, or that she was moving when she was killed, there could have been some sort of struggle. And if her hands are up going to her neck, we can pretty much throw out the window that she was like handcuffed or had her hands tied or anything like that. I personally believe, and this is again just my opinion, that he takes them across the creek. He plans on either photographing one or both of them nude or committing a sexual assault. At some point, one or both of the girls resists. I think perhaps because this was a violent, sadistic crime. And I think that's kind of what he got off on. Whoever did this, unfortunately, as disgusting as that is to think about. But him testifying that at some point Abby was at least partially nude and that Liberty was trying to move or at least walk or run away when she was killed. Seems to me that, maybe Liberty, and I don't want to over speculate everybody, maybe Liberty was seeing her best friend get sexually assaulted or about to be sexually assaulted, decided to run. We know Alan has a weapon. That's probably, he probably threatened them, and that's probably why the unspent round was found near the crime scene. Maybe he says, hey, to one of the girls, take your clothes off now, or I'm going to shoot you. Or even using one of the girls as leverage over the other one, saying, hey, if you run, I'm going to kill your friend. I genuinely think that something along those lines had to have occurred. And at some point, whether it's, after something was done to Abby or somebody, or potentially about to be done, maybe Libby tries to run or tries to fight back. But I think that at some point, if it is Alan or whoever it was, lost control of the crime scene and things just kind of got out of hand. And one of the other things that the Indiana State Police and the expert witnesses testified this week is that the crime scene was indicative of somebody who felt potential remorse over what they had done, based on, you know, the way some of the things were kind of partially covered up with a little bit of sticks or and again, I wasn't there. I'm just relaying secondhand information. But there was testimony that compared to other cases that they've studied, that there was evidence that the person who did this, that they call, there's a word for it. I wish I knew what it was. It's like a post-crime type of remorse that people go through when the reality of what they've done kind of hits them. And I'm almost certain that's why during the 2019 press conference, Doug Carter stated, I still believe you have a little bit of conscience left. Okay. There's something they found at that crime scene that told them that this person, the horror of what they had done kind of dawned on them and that they might have felt bad about it. So I'm pretty sure, based on the testimony here at the pretrial hearing, that that's why that happened now. So again, that kind of lends credence to the theory that this was, I think, a sexual assault type of thing or CSAM type of situation that just went haywire on the person or persons that committed this crime and turned into a very, very violent crime. And, the reality of Libby possibly trying to escape, or maybe Libby tried to do something or fought back, maybe threw something at it. Who knows? Maybe she actually did inflict some sort of a wound on Alan or whoever it was, and that's what enraged him. Maybe she tried to bite him. Maybe she, tried to punch or scratch him. Like, we don't know, because it's not like anybody did any forensic testing of Alan's body or fingernails or any of that sort of stuff. So, it's one of those things that, as the interview of Alan in 2022 revealed by Indiana State Police, and Jerry Holman saying to Alan, we may never know what fully happened there that day because you're too much of a coward. He actually said that to Alan. So there's still a lot of holes that need to be filled in here. And again, we also know at the pretrial hearing that Alan is alleged to have confessed at least 60 times, and that Indiana State Police detectives claim and allege that some of these confessions, uncoerced, included specific details about the crime scene that only somebody who was at that crime scene could have known. Which, if that gets admitted into court and they can show it was done in a non-coerced fashion, is going to be extremely, extremely damning for Mr. Richard Allen. Let's see what we have here. More comments here from Michelle O. Hi, Unsolved. The evidence is very evocative of the crime. Very sad but necessary to have on record. Agreed. The undoing aspect. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. It's called undoing. It's just a simple word. It is what it sounds like. Somebody realizing what they've done, trying to just basically do certain things at the crime scene to maybe psychologically minimize or minimalize how that crime just made them feel that they did that. And that kind of leads even more credence to the fact that if you guys remember a video I made not too long ago about how it's called Richard Allen Amateur Hour was the name of the video I posted, about how I theorized that this may have actually been his first killing. Now, if somebody's doing undoing, as they call it, at the crime scene, that's somebody that's showing pretty instant remorse. And I don't know if a seasoned serial killer would be feeling instant remorse. I'm sure it's potentially one of those things that happens. I know that everybody wants to be an FBI profiler. I know everybody wants to say that they can analyze everything. But I want to remind everybody, do you remember BTK's first crime? There was actually a sexual assault and a hanging of a child, as sick as that is, in the family's own basement. The Oteros were their names, that occurred at BTK's first crime scene. So to say that it's impossible for somebody to escalate to this type of crime. Maybe he's escalating it with deviant behavior, just in his everyday life, and then it finally boils over. And I just have a feeling that Alan isn't some prolific serial killer like everybody thinks. I hope to God he's not, because he made a lot of mistakes at that crime scene. I'm still kind of baffled that as much blood loss as there was, as violent of a crime as this was, that we don't have any information yet other than the unspent round forensically that links like Alan's blood or DNA or something to that crime scene. And I even wonder, is there any potential that you investigators out there have something in your possession from that crime scene that may have small amount of Alan's DNA on it, and you don't realize it still even? I mean, there have been crime cases in the past where people went back and looked at evidence that was kept for decades in storage and retested and reanalyzed parts of things and found somebody's DNA that they didn't find the first time. So that's not unprecedented. And I wonder, given the fact that he was handling her body, if it was him or whoever it was, dragging her 70 feet, it seems, by her arm. Is there no touch DNA on her arm? Is there, maybe there's a partial print that came from him having blood on his hands or something and him dragging, and that's why they couldn't. Maybe that's why Tobe Lesenby says, oh, it's complicated. Maybe they saw a partial print on her arm or something when she was being dragged from the blood being on his hand and being transferred, but it was too difficult to get a full print match from that. I mean, just again, me speculating. There's obviously lots of potential possibilities, and I only have a few more things I'm going to discuss here in this video because it's been like about 32 minutes I've been doing this. Any of you that are just joining me, you can go back and watch what I've discussed now. And again, I want to warn everybody, it's some very disturbing stuff. Is there anything else that I didn't go over here? Again, I don't want to overdo this. It's just the main points I want to rehammer home. The girls were, according to this expert witness, killed where they found. Libby was moved and dragged by her arm, according to this witness, 70 feet at the crime scene. And that the alleged rune or the F on the tree is actually, according to this witness, an upside down L shape and hand transfer. And that Liberty German may have been trying to escape at the time of her killing, or she was at least alive and moving. And the last one, again, was that Kegan Kline did, in fact, tell people him and his father were at the crime scene area that day, that they were in a red Jeep, that led to the search of the Wabash River, and that detectives determined that Kline was just completely BSing them and fabricating that story to the best of their knowledge. However, again, earlier in this video, I stated that that doesn't necessarily mean that him or somebody else using that Anthony Schatz account or somebody didn't facilitate this or take part of this directly or indirectly in this crime. So thanks again, everybody, for joining me for this live stream. I'm going to try and do another one of these, maybe even later today or in the next day or two, discussing this case to where it's later in the day, more people are on, and we can have more people in the comments on the screen here talking and interacting with me. Let's see, Michelle, before we go here. Did Kegan Kline make his false confession for clout? I mean, wouldn't it make him a target? I have theories about this. Doesn't mean they're right. I think that maybe initially, there's a couple of possibilities. I think maybe initially Kline thought that he was going to be implicated in this crime in some way, whether it's for the Anthony Schatz account, whether he told somebody the girls were going to be out there, that he thought the hammer was coming down on him. So he panicked and told his cellmate, told other people, yeah, I was out there. Like, people talk about undoing. I call this is called minimalizing. And it's a well-known tactic in crimes. If somebody was at a crime or a crime scene and they want to lessen their perceived involvement in that, they'll start trying to drag other people or other things into this crime to make them look less guilty, even if they are partially to blame. And I personally, this is my opinion, Michelle, feel that that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with Kline either thinking or knowing that he possibly facilitated this crime in some manner and thinking that he was going to go down as accessory to murder. And so he starts blaming his dad. He starts just making up wild scenarios to try to make other people look guilty as well. And who knows, maybe he knows more than he's letting on, but he didn't do himself any favors by leading investigators on a wild goose chase and telling them, hey, yeah, my dad dumped a cell phone. It sounds like he tried to throw his dad under the bus, for a lack of better wording, and scapegoat his dad and implicate his father, which is wild to think somebody would do that to their own father. It's like, it makes you wonder what's really going on in that household. Were they sharing CSAM, which is what the detectives still seem to think possibly happened? Were they both accessing the same accounts? Again, I keep going back to his behavior after the crime. Leaving for Vegas, the weird internet searches, all the stuff going on. And the thing I take from this is whether or not he was involved directly or indirectly with this crime still. Even though they can't prove it, this is a sick human being in Kegan Kline who's locked up in jail for like 40 plus years now. Thank goodness. And if anything came out of this already, it's the fact that Libby and Abby, their deaths aren't in vain right now, because there's a sick monster that's rotting in jail right now for a long time. A pathological liar in Kegan Kline, a known pedophile. And I hope he enjoys every single bit of his 40 plus years in jail, because, bud, you deserve it. Like, it just makes me sick to my stomach. Just absolutely makes me sick to my stomach. Let's see what we have here. Nevada Tan, LOL. That was the only false confession in the case. KK. It's not looking good for Richard Allen at all. The more we learn and the more the detectives are saying that there's information that he knew in some of these confessions about the crime scene. And it makes me sick. There's some people who've come on my page and they've said, well, the confessions were coerced, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, then how would he know information about the crime scene? And they're like, well, the guards were feeding the information to him and the police were feeding information to him. I'm like, everything isn't some giant Hollywood movie. It bothers me that people like this are on juries with people's fates in their hand. Everybody watches too much TV. Everybody thinks everything's a giant conspiracy theory. Everything thinks that that is a Halloween, like some sort of a Hollywood movie. And again, what the pretrial hearing is showing us is that's not usually the case. Like I said earlier in the video, remember all the people who said that the girls were taken somewhere else and taken back there later on? Well, you've got a guy with 20 years of blood spatter analysis and expertise in this field saying that that's absolutely not what happened, that the girls were killed where they were found, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, throwing some wild conspiracies that you guys have right out the window. Now, obviously, the defense has their chance to bring forth their experts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, even after these pretrial hearings, in my opinion, things only look worse for Richard Allen now than they did before the pretrial hearings, because you have a lot of information out here now that shows that detectives, even though they kind of bungled this and probably could have found Allen early on, spent an exhaustive amount of time, more than we could ever know, researching this case. I'll be interested to know, and this is my $1 million question that I just want to know. I'm burning to know. How long did they know about Richard Allen? And who told them about Richard Allen? Was it just as simple as them going back and reviewing tips and that's it? And them seeing his name and that's it? Or was there something else that raised a red flag before that about him specifically? That's what I want to know. What do we have here? I tend to believe the expert of 20 years who has all the info over the internet sleuths. Exactly. I mean, this is somebody that does this for a living. This is somebody that teaches this at multiple places. This is somebody that's testified in 30 different trials. So again, that's going to bear weight with any jury on this case. It's going to bear a lot of weight. So just graphic details, though, again, everybody. My heart, it makes me want to cry. I mean, these girls were basically scared to death, tortured, threatened, I think, at the crime scene. It makes me realize that these families can never get real justice in this case. You may get justice with a guilty verdict on some level, but that's not going to ever make any of this go away. And that's why when I made a video the other day, because they have gag orders on them, because Becky, Patty, and other people have gag orders right now, I encourage those families. When you make social media posts, instead of being angry before the trial, start sharing stories with us all about the lives of Abby and Libby. Instead of making this all about Mr. Richard Allen and his sick alleged motivations, start just telling us all who Abby and Libby were. Forgive me, I'm about to get worked up here. Start, you have a happy memory of them. Something you did one summer day, some place you want. Start rehumanizing these girls. Start reminding us these were human beings. Take the power away from whoever did this and from Richard Allen, and start sharing stories about who the girls were. You still have that power and that control over this man, if it is him, to let us know about all the wonderful times he spent with them, to let us know about the things they did for other people and how happy they made them. So I would encourage the family members to, show us who they were, so that when we see information about this case, it's not just all the negativity going on in the courtroom. It's also us being reminded that these girls were real people and that they're heroes, because their courage and their bravery is why I think there's a man on trial right now for this crime. Oh, what else do we have here? I'll just go through a few more comments here before I take off. It has to be some super complex grand conspiracy that only they understand. I mean, it's because we live in the internet era where everything is media. We're bombarded with stuff we see on TV. We're bombarded with movies that are just crazy plot lines. Everybody's watching Netflix all day. People can't get out of their own heads. Everybody wants the great story. Everybody wants some crazy wild story and wants to figure it out, when in reality, it's often just as simple as some sick person guided two girls for some perverted reason across a creek, threatened them, tried to maybe commit a sexual assault. One of them tried to escape. He was afraid of being caught, or maybe he was attacked. They fought back. He got mad and got violent. Sometimes it's just that simple, people, and it's just disgusting. Here's a good one. Silas, I just pray that the defense haven't tainted the jury. And, the defense does make a point that they're allowed, just as the prosecution has put out certain details, they're allowed to put out information as well. Granted, we can all debate whether or not that crime scene footage or photos were intentionally leaked, whether they were stolen, as the defense has alleged, or not. But again, that's part of the problem, is you have one side, in my opinion, and the prosecution putting out and letting things out to the public and a potential jury that is actually accurate information from the start, okay? Whereas you have the defense putting out information like Brad Holder, the BS F rune that's not really an F rune according to the blood spatter expert now, wild conspiracy theories, odinist, with nothing to back it up. Whereas the defense's information that they're leaking out, to your point, Silas, is just that. It's BS, in my opinion. And so they're tainting a jury pool potentially with false information, whereas the prosecution, in my opinion, is, I don't want to call it tainting because that's not what it is feeding a potential jury pool information that is going to be proven to be accurate. And you may say, well, the Unsolved, that's a bias, blah, blah, that's your opinion. Yeah, that's why I'm stating it and framing it as my opinion. Because it's my opinion based on having studied this case 5 years now, almost daily. And my opinion based on being a journalist that's won awards for decades, and my investigative research firsthand on this case, interviewing people that are firsthand sources like Kline's cellmate and other people who investigated this crime. So, yeah, Silas, I worry about that too. Because as this case has shown, people tend to just believe absolutely anything they're told. And I'm going to start referring to it as the L tree. Yeah, and maybe it's going to be symbolic because I think that the person who committed this crime is going to, in fact, take quite the L when this goes to trial. I really do. And I actually have confidence. I have confidence, I think, as difficult as it is to have sometimes, that when this goes to trial, that the jury, when they're presented with all of the evidence and when they're presented with all the ballistics and all of the expert blood spatter testimony and all of the eyewitnesses and all the circumstantial evidence, and Alan admitting he was out there that day during that time frame, that a jury's going to pool together and they're going to render a verdict based on the facts of the case and not crazy stuff that they can't prove or crazy theories that involve people who have known alibis, et cetera, which again, I still question whether or not this Odinism angle is even going to be allowed. There's a potential when she rules on this before trial that Judge Gall may say you're absolutely not allowed, based on what we heard at the pretrial hearing, to bring the Odinism information into this case. Keep in mind, that can still happen. And if the pretrial information and testimony continues the way it is, that might happen. They might not even be allowed to bring that angle or that theory up. And I'm actually kind of baffled in light of all the information the defense team is facing that they're still playing this Odinist card. And I think that was a big tactical mistake on their part. Just screaming to anybody in the public who would hear Odinism, this, that, ritual sacrifice. I guess when one of the defense experts was cross-examined this past week, from what I've read in the transcripts and information, they couldn't provide information about another similar ritualistic crime of this type committed by Odinists. So this would be unprecedented. So that makes it even more unlikely. If their own witnesses can't even produce a similar scenario where this has occurred in the past. So I don't think they were very wise to start throwing this Odinism theory out so early like they did and to stick with it, because I think that kind of shot themselves in the foot, because it's not leaving them much of an out now, is it? If that's the card they're playing and the card that Richard Allen has chosen to play, and it's getting debunked in pretrial largely, you got a problem, bud, when you go to trial. Because what are you going to change your story to now? When the prosecution would be like, well, first it was Odinism and our expert showed that was crap, and first you said this, then you said this, and the prosecution's going to prove that it's all crap, in my opinion. Let's see what we have here. according to Tom Frost, Libby was moved 7 feet, not 70. That's not what the transcripts that I'm being told from people in court stated. Again, if that winds up being the case, so be it. But again, there's people that I know and trust that are in court this week transcribing this and sharing information with me that state that she was drugged 70 feet away. And again, let's say that you're right, Peruvian, and it ends up being 7. That's obviously a huge difference. So what I can try to do is and I don't know how much of it they'll release, but I can try to physically ask for transcripts. But there's a lot of testimony. I don't know if some of it will be redacted. I mean, they did allow the public into these hearings. But I know Turbo Time, I know other sites are reporting that they said 70 feet in court. So I will keep an eye on that because that kind of concerns me. You said it's according to Tom Press. Okay, I'll go and look and see what he had to say. But regardless, according to the blood spatter expert, Libby was dragged through a pool of her own blood at the crime scene some distance, which is the bottom line here. So just, and that she was actually moving and trying to either walk or run away from the crime scene when she was killed, according to this blood spatter expert. Let's see what else we have here. Oh yeah, you're correct, Proven 6. I believe they were Turbo Times notes and she was going to add a correction card to her video. Okay, yeah, so, that's real interesting to see. So if it was 7 feet instead of 70 feet, that would make more sense because, it got me wondering, and that's why I stated in the beginning of this video that I had a hard time believing that somebody would drag somebody 70 feet. So I wonder why she was saying that repeatedly in her video, because I watched her video as well, because she was in the courtroom taking and transcribing very detailed notes as well. Interesting. What else do we have? We live in a world where people dispute scientific fact because it doesn't line up with their truth. It's concerning. Well, 70 feet might still be possible. Steve, True Crime Web, said it was incredibly slippery ground out there. It's also very, very, hilly terrain. Depending on where somebody's dragged from, if you're dragging somebody downhill, obviously it's going to be more difficult than dragging them uphill. I don't think anybody's going to try and drag anybody 70 feet uphill if they're a couple 100 pounds. So I want to reiterate here to anybody who watched the beginning of the video, this is just information I'm relaying from people who were in the courtroom transcribing notes. So 7 feet, 70 feet, we're going to get to the bottom of that. But the bottom line was that it was testified in court that she was dragged some distance after it appears trying to escape the crime scene or while she was still walking. And they again, for those who are just joining the video now, the blood spatter expert stated that he knew this because of the patterns on her feet being bloody and other details that showed she was likely trying to escape or at least walking or running from whoever committed this crime when she was killed, which is just disturbing to think about. What else do we have here? Wet leaf litter on the ground might assist moving a body. Yeah, again, I've never done that myself, so I can't testify to that one way or another. The YouTuber said 70 has it corrected on their video. Yeah, see, now I feel bad because, I'm sharing information with people in the beginning of this video about what other people said who were there. So if you jump into this video later, thanks C. Taylor for sharing that information with me, then in fact, maybe it was less of a distance than that. The testimony stated that there were multiple large pools of blood and that she was dragged through by her arm, allegedly, back closer to where Abby was. So Libby was Libby was the victim of a very, very violent crime, unfortunately, whether she was dragged 7 feet or 70. So I'm sure when this video is posted, there's going to be people who watch the beginning of my video and start saying all kinds of nasty things. Oh, well, you know, she was only dragged this amount. You don't know what you're talking about. Again, I'm just relaying information from people who are there transcribing stuff. This will all come out at trial. But the bottom line is, regardless of the distance, it's being testified by expert witness that the girl, Liberty German, was dragged through a pool of her own blood some distance. Just, again, sickening. Look at Turbo. She corrected it 7 to 8, not 70. Okay, she must have recently done that because, like, I was up half the night watching that video, watching channels on other videos. Thank you, Silas. What else do we have here? It actually makes sense, but doesn't change his guilt. Agreed. Boost Mobile, do you think that there may be a plea deal coming with Richard Allen instead of the possible death penalty? You know, the whole death penalty thing, even though I only live one state over from Indiana, confuses me because I think that there's certain filings that had to be made or have to be made, certain situations or circumstances that have to be in place for this to become a death penalty case. As far as the plea deal goes, you know, at first I thought that, yeah, there could be a plea deal coming. And I'm sure you could probably ask for a plea deal just about any time before the trial's over and say, hey, prosecution, you know, we admit this, work with us, what's on the table, and that they could give that. But, you know, I don't know what that plea deal would entail. I mean, I doubt that the prosecution is going to be willing to do anything less than give Allen life in jail. Unfortunately, I'm starting to lean more and more away from a plea deal in light of the fact that we have people who were in the courtroom this week saying that during some of the testimony, Allen was actually animated for the first time, shaking his head at certain things. That doesn't sound like the behavior of somebody to me who is going to be willing to accept a plea deal anymore. So that kind of bothers me, to answer your question. That's again, just my opinion. So what else? Blame it on the lack of cameras. It's like we got to go through each reporter's perception filters relayed over telephone. Yep, and that's a big problem. And that's why when I began this video, I stated, hey, this is just secondhand information based on people who were in the courtroom, which is a limited number of people who can be in there, through news reports that are posted, through people who are YouTubers that I trust and follow who've been posting information. But yeah, it's really unfortunate that we live in a country where the First Amendment exists and freedom of the press and, you know, government shall pass no law. And then you have one branch of the government, like the judicial branch, basically stifling everybody's First Amendment rights by not allowing cameras in the courtroom. As a journalist, that bothers me. I completely agree, Michelle. I don't think that's right at all. I think this trial should be televised. I personally think that all trials that people want televised, if it can be afforded, and news cameras are the ones paying for the cameras to be in there, I think they should all be allowed in there. If nobody has anything to hide, everything's above board. I mean, I can understand there's graphic, gruesome details sometimes that go into things, but, you know, that's what censors are for, and that's what cable TV is for. Completely agree. Nevada 10, Nevada 10, I appreciate you sticking around so long for us to actually clarify some of these things, if that's the case. 7 feet more plausible, but don't worry if you make mistakes because you're self-aware enough to correct it every step of the way. Well, yeah, that's my job as a journalist. Again, like I stated, my only fear is, you know, this is the information that I took notes on last night here on my, where is it? It's not even showing up on here. Okay, that I have a big, this green screen stuff. I have a big thing of notes here, even though you can't see it because the light's reflecting, that I took last night before I went to sleep. And I didn't go back and re-review the video that Turbo Time posted this morning since then. So that's why in the beginning of the video I went with 70 feet. So hopefully everybody who watches this goes easy on me and realizes that, hey, I came here, and that's why I have such great followers and viewers on my page that are kind enough to, if they see something that's a mistake or a correction or needs correcting, that you bring it to my attention. Accuracy is the most important thing in the world to me. It's why I vetted all the information that I gave to the Indiana State Police and detectives regarding Kline's cellmates, et cetera, before bringing it to the public, because I care about getting this crime solved, not just getting views on my YouTube channel. Okay. And I want to make that very clear to everybody. Some of that information you guys saw back in the day on my page that I immediately took down, that was all information that I went to detectives with long, long before it was ever made public. A lot of people joining here as we're waking up. My name is Martha. I am in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I've been following this case for over 7 years. Yes, Martha, I started following this case when I have what I suspect was one of the first cases of COVID. It was February 2020. I had gone to a Milwaukee Bucks basketball game with my son. I had gone to the Milwaukee Children's Museum, and I was actually asking, because I used to have skin cancer on my arm when I was a kid. You probably can't see it here. Yeah, it's not going to show right. This huge scar right here. This huge, like 10 to 12 inch scar on my forearm from having skin cancer removed from my arm when I was younger. And so I was, at the beginning of the pandemic, asking my doctor for a waiver for specialty window tint plates in the state of Illinois so I could have window tint to keep the UV rays off my body. Because I guess they say that I'm at a higher risk of getting skin cancer again because I had it once when I was younger. So I try to be careful. So this was 4 years ago. I have a new car since then. So I don't have window tint on it. It actually can be kind of dangerous if it's too dark. But my point to telling that story was I was at the doctor's office and it was 2020. I'm in there and there's a kid in there and he's coughing and coughing on the other side of the doctor's office. And I hate my doctor's office because there's always a million people waiting in there. And people knew that COVID was out there, but it was only February 2020. And I remember the doctor coming out and yelling at the receptionist, literally yelling, and said, "What in the hell's the matter with you? How did you let this kid sit out here in the lobby coughing all over the last half an hour, not telling me or putting a mask on him?" And I either caught it there or at the Milwaukee Bucks basketball. And like, sure enough, a week later, I'm sitting at home, lying on the couch. I've got a light fever, and I yacked up so many bags of crap. So they never had COVID tests at the time. And I remember going to the emergency room for one night, and there's people walking in the ER coughing, et cetera. And the doctor said, "Well, do you want a flu test?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, even if it tests positive, there's nothing you can do, right? And they didn't have COVID tests yet. So I just went home. The fever went away after about 24 hours. I coughed pretty bad for about a week. And I didn't catch COVID again until like last Christmas. And last Christmas, I didn't have any cough. I didn't have any fever. It was just sinus irritation. And I tested negative for like 5 or 6 days. And then I was tested positive, just with a ton of fatigue for like 4 or 5 days. And that's all I had. I had it really mild the second time, thankfully. So sorry for the long-winded story, Martha. My point being, that's when I was introduced. And I'd already known about it and studied a little bit beforehand. But that's when I really, 4.5 years ago, started really digging and delving deep into the Delphi case. Just nothing else to do. Started watching YouTube videos from the Captain Howdy, from Minivan Traveler, from Anthony Greeno, which we won't even go there. There's a lot of good YouTubers out there, but even people who were bad people were sharing information about the case at the time. And so it really got me interested in it when I was sick with COVID, gave me something to do. And it wasn't until, a couple of years later that I decided to start making YouTube videos. And that was a real difficult decision for me because I didn't know how I felt about making these types of videos and if it would bother me or if people would attack me for trying to do these videos. And, full disclosure, my channel, I was actually working on a different YouTube channel that was more like a fun travel channel that I was trying to get monetized, and it wasn't going too well. And I made this channel, and then this channel accidentally got enough subscribers to become monetized. But as I tell people, I don't have that many subscribers. Like I'm still a professional journalist. My work has still led in the past to another cold case in Illinois being solved. It's led to the police interviews in this case that are now confirmed in the pretrial hearing, where information was vetted. So that's why I don't worry about it too much, because I know that my work is actually doing things to try and help other people, and has helped other people. And so I try and think about it in that way. And it's like, if news networks are out there making billions of dollars off of advertisements, sharing people's horror stories, I know my heart is in the right place as a parent myself, that I'm out there trying to keep these cases in the public eye and doing it for the right reasons. So I'm going to try and do more streams about other cases here in the future, cases that interest me. And I think the first two off the bat that I'm going to do more about are the Evansdale homicides. I was actually just out in about in Olween, Iowa. Somebody I know got married out there. And I'd really like to put more pressure on them to try to solve that case out in Evansdale, because I still, depending on what evidence they have from the crime scene where the girls were dumped out there, I still think that's a potentially solvable case. And I was really taken aback when I went out there at just how rural the area where the girls' bodies were dumped were at that wildlife preserve. And I don't want to get too far off from the Delphi stuff here, but I'm going to cover that case. I'm going to cover the Missy Beavers case, which fascinates me, and other ones you guys suggest in the future here, now that I'm able to do more live streams and spend more time doing this. But just when I was in Iowa this spring in April, whoever dumped those girls out in Evansdale, out in that area, it's not the kind of area where you would just go and do something like that unless you were absolutely familiar with that place. So whoever committed that crime, I'm 100% convinced, just like I was convinced and posted videos about it before they captured him, that whoever did that crime, much like Richard Allen, lived very close to that crime scene, within probably 15, 20 miles tops, if that. So as we've seen in this crime, there are ways that you can just kind of close the noose on your potential suspect pool. And I really would love to see detectives' notes in that case. That crime fascinates me. We're going to be talking about that sometime soon. So thank you, Martha. I didn't mean to go on some 10-minute sidetrack discussion there after your comment, but thank you for talking to me. Anthony France, thank you. You've been a big supporter of my work. Glad I caught this live. I appreciate you. What else we have? If you make a comment and pin it to the top, they may prevent later viewers from misunderstanding or going crazy. I appreciate that suggestion, because you're right. That's a good suggestion. What is the saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's the truth. Thank you. I appreciate that. Silas, we need more like you. Thank you. I won't dwell. Thank you, first of all, for saying that. I won't dwell on this too much, but as a country, we need more people that really care about things, particularly their kids. A lot of the reason why adults are turning out the way they are is because of how they're raised or raised poorly as kids. When the divorce rate is 50-something%, when you have all kinds of poverty in the world, when you have kids that are from abusive, verbally or physically households, there's a lot of things that lead to this. And I just think we as people in this world can do a lot better. I mean, I'm a parent to a child that's just became an adult. And I raised that child. I had sole custody of him since age 2. Raised him myself. And was it difficult? Sure, at times. But I taught my child respect. I taught my child love. Every day I tell my kid I love him. To this day. And kids don't hear that enough. Adults go through stress, but you can't take your life out on your kid. Having a kid is a huge and expensive responsibility. And I would just implore anybody, tell your kids you love them all the time. They need to hear that. We're in a scary world. There's social media that has negativity all day, people fighting all day, talks of wars, et cetera, et cetera. Start letting your kids look to you for assurance. Your kids look to you for strength. They want to know that things are going to be okay. Just provide them that reassurance, if nothing else. Anyway, rant over. Nevada 10, yeah, definitely need more reputable true crime content channels. That's true. And, the ones that really bother me are the ones that exploit the families, the ones that re-victimize them. I don't want to go into too many details and start wars with other channels. There's a few that really bother me out there that re-victimize the families, that blame people like, Mike Patty, who has an alibi. He's on camera. Okay. There's still channels out there blaming somebody who was on camera at the time of the murders. That's a family member. Imagine if you lost your child or your grandchild and you had to go through that crap every day. Sickening. Channels like that should be taken down. They should. And the other one that bothers me are these channels that are like psychic channels that claim they're contacting spirits of victims. And the fact that so much of our society that could potentially be on a jury pool believes all that shit. Get the hell out of here. Just disgusting. It really, really is. Lita Punk fan. Love your live streams. Thanks for your coverage. And again, now that I'm getting more familiar with how to conduct these live streams and how to get people involved in the comments on my screen and interacting, I'm going to do a lot more of them. I'm finally recovering some of my own medical issues I had to address, minor things, thankfully, over the past year or so. And I have a lot more time now than I used to. As I've told people in some of my other live streams, I'm also trying to help take care of an elderly parent that's got COPD, that's in his 70s, that I take care of a lot of his grocery shopping needs, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a very, very busy person, in addition to my life as a journalist and sports journalist here in Illinois. Just doing these things and researching these things in these cases and presenting information to people in an accurate manner matters. And so that takes time. And that's why I don't care about my follower count. I mean, I do, obviously. It's nice to have more people watching your work. But that's not what this is about. This is about potentially helping victims' families, potentially producing leads. And I would encourage you all, you'd have to go dig for it, but I have the wildest true crime story of any YouTuber that I know. Still, that I'm shocked doesn't have more views on my page. And it's my true crime story about the Hollywood Ripper and how information that I gave detectives helped solve a cold case in Illinois after 18 years, and how the person who committed those crimes, or that crime, was a childhood Little League teammate and classmate of mine. And that information I gave the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and relayed to them in Illinois wound up bringing charges in that cold case, the Trisha Piccaccio case. His name is Mike Gargiulo, the Hollywood Ripper. And while I was working as an editor at patch.com, there was somebody who I thought was joking around that left comments on our page. I actually got into contact with that person, found out they were real. He stated he had information about the crime. And sure enough, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office flew this witness after this case was unsolved for 18 years, flew him out to Illinois, interviewed him, and that was the linchpin that brought charges against this guy. So when I tell all of you that I've helped facilitate the solving of a cold case in Illinois, it's 100% true. Whether it's dumb luck or not, we can debate that all day long, but the fact remains that instead of thinking that it was somebody goofing around, the information got shared. And the reason I'm telling this story is because I want to encourage all of you. You never know when somebody tells you, to all of you out there, something you see on somebody's page, anything. It's why they say no tip is too small. If there's something you think could potentially help detectives, even if it seems like it's a 1 in 1,000 chance, send them that information. If there's one thing this video has shown, and the pretrial hearings have shown, the detectives completely vetted all my Kegan Kline information. and him claiming that he was there in a red Jeep, etc., claiming, the claims that his cellmate made, they looked into all that. So even if you think they're not looking into some of these things, they are. Okay? They are. Boy, I get to the point in these videos where I've talked for like an hour. My throat starts getting dry. So I'm going to cut it short here soon after I put some more of these comments up here. Again, I almost wish I hadn't started this live stream sooner because I know a lot of people are joining and commenting now. I'll try to do one again either later today or tomorrow because I'll have some time then. And we can discuss Delphi. We can discuss other cases, whatever you want. If you see this, feel free to leave some comments about what you'd like to see me talk about or cover pertaining to this or other cases. If nothing else, unrestricted internet access is raising a generation of psychopaths. Well, it's not so much that. I think the bigger issue is that when we were all kids and we were younger, we had more social interaction, okay? People knew how to talk to people. People weren't offending people from afar. And people would never do that to people's faces because there were consequences. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people committing certain crimes in big cities, et cetera. People don't think there's consequences to their actions because they're used to being raised on the internet where they can say and do whatever they want and nobody does anything about it. Think about what that does to you and conditions you psychologically to do. Well, there's no consequences to my actions. We saw it with Kegan Kline. Kids growing up on the internet, creating troll Anthony Shots accounts. Oh, I can do whatever I want. I'm not going to get caught. Bam, 40 years in jail. Prime example. Prime example in this case. It's creating people who have no social interaction, and that's not good. Human beings are social creatures, and they're meant to interact with people, not to sit behind computers all day. As I say this, interacting with all of you behind a computer. But I mean, at least this is for a positive reason. We're talking, we're having productive discussions as opposed to just a bunch of crap. I totally agree with you about those psychic channels. It's sickening. I believe in human instinct and human intuition. And sometimes people can have feelings or thoughts about things that are right. But I think it's more of a life experience thing and kind of a sixth sense as opposed to full-blown psychic stuff. But yeah, the psychic people that exploit people, it's terrible. I relate. I work full-time and care for my elderly housebound dad. Brought my kids on my own up too. Good for you. That's just... It takes a lot of courage to sacrifice parts of your own life to help others. I give you a lot of credit for that. It's not easy. They are nothing but evil. There's nothing hidden that won't be just revealed, and I believe the truth will become to light. Justice prevail. Yep, I think there's going to be justice in this case too. I really, really do. Even if it's a tiny bit of info you give to police, you have no idea what info they're sitting on and holding back behind the scenes. Yeah. I mean, look at... there's so many examples. So many examples where just a little bit of information was that linchpin. And, that's why Doug Carter kept saying, we're one piece of the puzzle away. We just need a name. And it's sad that name was sitting there the whole entire time for them. But none of us knew until later on that they had an unspent round that they could match. And I'm still blown away that Allen didn't throw away his weapon, but he probably didn't. Either A, didn't realize he left the unspent round at the crime scene, or B, which is more likely. I mean, I used to want to be an FBI agent, and I didn't know that they could match unspent round extractor marks until this case. Goes to show you. People think they know, but they don't. It's hard to commit a crime these days of this magnitude and get away with it, especially in broad daylight. I mean, how many years later? They got him. Allegedly. I meant the psychic channels are nothing but evil. Yeah, that's agreed. Let's see, Mark Craven. If Richard Allen is guilty, there has to be a history of something. And I discussed that earlier in the video. And I discussed why that's not necessarily the case, in my opinion. A history of something. Yes, like signs of deviant behavior, perhaps. Signs of him maybe being into younger girls. It could be on his phone. It could be on his internet search history. But does this necessarily mean that he's killed before, Mark? I'm not 100% confident of that because, as I stated earlier in this video, in the BTK case, his first crime was very, very violent toward a child in the Otero family. And there's other cases where people commit very, very violent crimes as their first crime. I think he made a lot of mistakes in this crime, if it is in fact him. That's why I made the video Richard Allen Amateur Hour, and I would encourage people to watch that video as to what my theories are about why I think this was potentially Allen's first homicide if it was him. Now, you're right in that there has to be a history of something, whether he keeps it to himself, whether, there's items he keeps in his house, et cetera, whether he's engaging in perverse activities on some level that we don't know about. That, I believe, there probably has to be a history of somewhere. Whether or not they've uncovered that in searches of his home, his internet, his devices, et cetera, secondhand sources. We know we have secondhand sources claiming that Allen's behavior might have been inappropriate while he was working at a Walmart. So we know there's problem drinking in his past. So there's obviously more stuff going on here, but only detectives right now know if they have information as to what level that escalated to. There's a lot of people that keep a lot of things hidden in this world. So, we hope that there's no other homicides that Richard Allen has committed. I'm not 100%. I guess my point is just you could be right, Mark, but I'm not 100% convinced that this isn't, like, I think this could be his first crime that escalated to this level. Could be wrong. Could be wrong, too. Boy, a lot of people joining the chat now here. I've been looking into the Evansdale case lately as well, and I agree that he knows the area where the girls were found. Just seems like that case can be solved. I'm 50-50 on whether or not it can be solved because I don't know. Those bodies were left to be decomposed for a long time, which is difficult. But when you start losing physical evidence at a crime scene, it makes it that much more difficult. But what's even more worrisome is it means that you have, unless the person's in jail or dead now, somebody out there that was a very, very deviant, violent predator. And what blows my mind about that case, the more I look at the area there, the more the path where the girls were allegedly abducted from, and we'll do an Evansdale live stream. The path that the girls were abducted from, at the end of it, the roadway is like 40 or 50 feet from the path, meaning somebody either had to have taken them or lured them from a pretty far distance away from that road or that path, or driven onto the grass and over in that area and abducted them at the end of the path. Like, it's a ballsy daylight crime, just like this Richard Allen case. Just absolutely ballsy. Like, anyway, we'll get into that another day. The channels of Ruckus and Mr. Steve are currently working on the Evansdale case. They have great hope it can be solved. They know a lot about it. Yeah, I know a lot about it too. And I've actually posted a couple of minor videos about it. And one of the things that baffles me is how, again, I keep going off on tangents here, is how the Evansdale case, if you take the Abby and Libby case and the Evansdale case and reverse the dates, they're what's called, what's the word? When you take something and reverse the date or lettering of the word, it's pretty wild. 7/13. Let's see, what is it? Abby and Libby were two. Like, I have it on my page. Like, the odds of it are just that, and a double homicide occurring at the same time are wild, which is why a lot of people have speculated that, maybe Richard Allen was involved in that case. That Iowa is pretty far away from Delphi, but I mean, you have a double homicide of two young girls that are abducted, that are dumped in the woods. It's just heartbreaking. And double homicides of multiple young girls. It's one of the rarest crimes in the United States of America, according to FBI statistics. So it doesn't happen very often either. So it's understandable why people would speculate that those two crimes could be related. And I know that investigators in Evansdale and also in Indiana have compared notes about those two crimes. But the police in Iowa, they haven't revealed much information about what they have, because it's probably one of those things where if they ever do get a confession from somebody or information, they don't want to jeopardize their case, much like the Delphi case. Mark, not saying he's killed before. There has to be some past behaviors that are red flags. Yeah, probably. I want to know why Libby started filming him. Did they have a prior interaction on the trails, or was his behavior just off? That's the $1 million question. And the other thing is, were the girls expecting to meet somebody there that day? Did she perhaps see somebody coming from the distance and like, oh well, this doesn't look like the guy I was supposed to meet. This doesn't look like Anthony Schatz. This doesn't look like this person, that person. There could be a number of reasons why she started filming, and she had to have been doing it discreetly. Otherwise, he probably would have taken the camera. Obviously, I mean, if he's got the presence of mind to drag some girl's body and try and cover his tracks at a crime scene, I don't know. It just could be a number of different reasons. This is Martha again. Do you think that you might cover the Summer Wells case? That little girl's been missing for 3 years. Very tragic story about she's been brought up. I'll keep that in mind to add that to my list. There's so many cases that deserve attention, and that's the difficult thing about all of this is, boy, you can never run out of crime cases to cover. But that's one that also interests me that I don't know as much about. I know the general details of it, so I would like to look into that some more. Thank you for the recommendation. We just don't know anything at all about the guy. That's the thing. Just looking forward to seeing the entire picture. Now, I've studied psychology some. I've been an investigative journalist. I consider myself almost an expert in human body language just because I have had to interview people my whole life. And if it is Alan, I see somebody who was in the midst of a midlife crisis. He's 40-something years old. He's short. He's stubby. He's not exactly a super attractive guy. He's going through a midlife crisis. His daughter's going out of the house. We know he's got problem drinking going on. She goes off, gets married. Who knows what his life is like with his wife? I mean, you all remember the cell phone video where like she sneaks up on him and he gives her just the evil, dirty look. So there's some kind of disdain or unhappiness in that relationship that's unspoken. They may go out and get drunk together. They may be a happily married couple on the surface. I would guarantee you, even just based on the fact she had to call the police in the middle of the night and take him to the hospital when he had a drinking episode before these crimes were, I forget if it was before or after. Forgive me. I think it was after. That's documented that this is a guy who may have a history of mental illness of some kind too, that's undiagnosed. It just, anytime you spend all your time partying, drinking, secondhand allegations from people he worked with about creepy behavior, like you said, Nevada, we don't know. We don't. And the more I put pieces of the puzzle together from information that I do know about this guy, it paints a different picture to me than the wholesome family guy that everybody seems to try to portray Richard Allen as. There's more going on there. 100% guaranteed. Again, this is just me speculating in my opinion based on known information, but yeah. Okay, we're at an hour and a half here. People are going to not want to watch an hour and a half replay, so I'll try to cut it short here and do another video, like I said, later today. So you can either look for that or tomorrow since I have some time. Could have been as simple as something like Richard Allen's proximity to them. Such a vast area, if he was enclosing another space, it must have been a red flag to start filming. Well, especially when somebody's following you or walking toward you on the end of a 60-foot high bridge and you're an innocent teenager. Yeah, I panic when people get close to me in the grocery store. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of people who are in people's space, so to speak. Especially since the pandemic, you see people in public like coughing and stuff. It's like, dude, at least cover it up or go walk somewhere else. Like, come on. It's just classless. Contempt. He had the look of contempt. That's the word for it. That's somebody who did not want somebody seeing what they were doing and kind of feels like his own privacy has been invaded. What are you doing there, bud, that makes you feel that way? Something sketchy. I'm telling you. It's going to come out at trial that this guy had some weird internet searches. I'm telling you. Mark my words. This is a prediction. It's going to come out at trial that this man had some creepy ass internet searches. Just my prediction. Thank God she didn't have Nevada. What a smart girl. Yeah, that's the thing that connects the whole entire scenario. If Alan hadn't come forward and said he was out there that day, he'd still be a free man. He screwed himself. That combined with the video and the eyewitness accounts, the ballistics, it may be a largely circumstantial case, but there is a small amount of physical evidence that works in great corroboration with that circumstantial case at this time. Mark, very good live. Thanks. Thank you, Mark. Going to replay for sure. Only caught half. And again, Nevada, when you go to the beginning and it says 70 feet, she was dragged instead of 7. That's information that I vetted last night in my notes that I didn't get a chance to revet. So apparently people are saying now that she was dragged, according to the expert witness, 7 feet and not 70. So my apologies there. South Coast got the whole thing covered. I agree with you. Unsolved will have secrets in his history. Maybe not as horrific as Rex Huerman, but likely still foul. Yeah, it's going to be something. So again, thanks everybody for joining me. I'm going to go out and get some coffee, even though I kind of quit drinking coffee for the most part a couple of months ago. I'm going to go out and give myself a little bit of an energy boost today. Thanks again, everybody, for watching and for keeping the memories of these 2 young girls alive. We're going to do a live stream again soon. And God bless you all, and justice for Abby and Libby. Thanks, everyone.